One of the most psychologically destabilizing experiences a narcissist can endure is the total disintegration of the narrative they have carefully constructed about themselves and their position in your life. This is far more than a simple blow to their ego. It represents a seismic fracture in the very foundation of their identity. You see, narcissists do not operate within the same reality that most people understand. They exist inside a form of psychological theater, where they are perpetually the protagonist, the most significant figure, and the sun around which all other planets revolve. However, that story is incredibly fragile. It functions only if every other person involved agrees to perform their assigned role. For a long period, you likely did exactly that. Perhaps you did not do so willingly or even consciously, but you played the part nonetheless. You offered explanations, defended their actions, and struggled to be understood. You rationalized their toxic behavior, suppressed your own requirements, and endured their volatile emotional atmosphere in the constant hope that something would eventually transform. Yet over time, something far more vital shifted instead. The narcissistic narrative depends entirely upon the maintenance of control, emotional control, perceptual control, and even authority over the definition of truth within the relationship. They rewrite history whenever it serves their needs. They dismiss your suffering, exaggerate their own grievances, and distort logic until it becomes a weapon for dominance rather than a bridge for dialogue. All of this serves a single objective: to sustain the illusion that they are indispensable, dominant, and always several steps ahead. But that facade only persists as long as you consent to view it as reality. The second you cease participating in that delusion, when you begin to see through the strategic manipulations and respond not with fiery anger, but with quiet clarity and detachment, that is when the entire structure begins to unravel. It may not happen in a loud or dramatic fashion, but it is devastating because in that instance, you are not merely walking away in a physical sense, you are withdrawing their psychological oxygen. For an individual who built their entire persona on external validation, your silence becomes an existential threat. In their eyes, this is not just a personal slight, it is a symbolic betrayal. Your departure highlights something they have worked tirelessly to hide even from themselves: that the story they have been telling about who they are and how the world sees them is pure fiction. This realization does not arrive all at once. It crawls in, frequently hidden behind walls of rage, cold indifference, or another cycle of shifting blame. But beneath that defensive surface lies a silent terror that perhaps they have been mistaken about their own nature all along. This brings us to a complex psychological concept regarding the link between identity and narrative. Human beings are fundamentally storied creatures. We make sense of our existence through the tales we tell ourselves. We define who we are by remembering what we have achieved, who we have cared for, and what we have survived. But when that story is rigid and built upon a foundation of fantasy and grandiosity rather than truth, any crack in the surface feels like an impending death. So what occurs when you finally step out of the role they scripted for you? They are left standing on an empty stage. They may rush to fill the void, projecting their needs onto someone else or trying to recreate the same toxic dynamic with a new target, but it never resonates quite the same way. You were not just another performer in their play. You were the one who witnessed them deeply, perhaps more than anyone else ever had. When someone who truly saw them walks away, they are forced to confront something even more unsettling than abandonment: the realization that the story itself was never actually real. What fills the resulting vacuum is not just loneliness, but a profound sense of disorientation. They lose their sense of self without the role they occupied in your life because your presence paradoxically gave their false self a sense of purpose. Now your absence exposes the hollow core that was there from the beginning. This is the exact moment their grand narrative collapses, not simply because you left, but because you departed without needing them to comprehend why. You exited the theater with dignity rather than vengeance. In doing so, you did not just terminate a relationship, you shattered an illusion. That is what makes your silence so incredibly potent. It speaks a truth their ego cannot argue against. In that quiet space, the story continues to crack, and the narcissist is left to face the one thing they dread above all else: the reality of who they are without your reflection. Emotional detachment sounds almost clinical or simple, but in the world of narcissistic dynamics, it is a deeply subversive act. Detachment is not the absence of emotion. It is the absolute mastery of it. It is what happens when you stop reacting, when your feelings are no longer something they can leverage or manipulate against you, and when a narcissist realizes they no longer have a key to your internal world, they lose control in the most significant way possible. Narcissists do not merely crave your attention, that is far too basic. They want something much more intimate, your emotional investment. They want your highs, your lows, your frustration, and your despair. Every reaction you provide serves as evidence that they still hold power over you. Even your tears and your anger are signals to them that the connection has not been severed. You are still tethered to them, and if you are tethered, they can still pull the strings. This is why your internal detachment is so threatening. It signifies that you have walked away mentally and spiritually. You are no longer easily triggered, no longer hunting for their approval, and no longer twisting yourself into emotional knots to keep the peace. You have started to respond with intention rather than reacting on impulse. In doing so, you have reclaimed your sovereignty. To be clear, this is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. That is numbness, which is a byproduct of unresolved pain. True detachment is an act of psychological brilliance. You see the narcissist for exactly who they are, rather than who they pretended to be or who you wish they would become. You stop casting your empathy onto them and begin to observe them with precision rather than bitterness. Interestingly, this is often when the narcissist makes their most desperate attempts to pull you back. They may suddenly appear more charming, more apologetic, or strangely self-aware. They might pretend to finally recognize your value, but it is a defense mechanism rather than a genuine epiphany. They are reacting to a loss of influence because your detachment has flipped the script and changed the rules of the encounter. For the first time, they are not the ones dictating the terms. You will see it in the small things. The way they hunt for a reaction, test your boundaries, or try to trigger guilt and nostalgia. But when you offer nothing, no hostility, no pleading, and no false hope, they are left with nothing to pull. For them, that is terrifying because it means their grip is not just sliding, it is gone. What we are truly discussing here is the process of individuation, becoming a whole and autonomous person. When you detach, you are no longer trapped in the orbit of someone else's dysfunction. You are anchored in your own principles. You have seized back the authority to define what is real and what is acceptable. You have denied them the significance they crave at your expense. This is a massive shift that requires no grand confrontation, only steady self-possession. The narcissist does not know how to process that because They deal only in extremes: worship or hate, total devotion or total abandonment. Indifference is a language they cannot speak or spin. This is where the true transformation starts, not in them, but in you. You are no longer moving to their beat, you are composing your own. They eventually realize that the version of you they once controlled has ceased to exist. You have evolved and rendered their entire tactical manual obsolete. When your detachment becomes a permanent state of being, they understand that the power struggle has concluded. You did not defeat them in a fight, you simply transcended the game entirely. There is something fundamentally threatening to a narcissist about your deep internal independence. This isn't just about managing your own life, it is about having an identity rooted in a stable hierarchy of values. That kind of independence does not just annoy the narcissist, it exposes their internal lack. They are not self-sustaining people. Their sense of self is brittle and entirely dependent on others to reflect back a sense of worth. Without that mirror, their mask fails, and they are forced to look at a well of shame and confusion they cannot handle. When you become emotionally self-sufficient, you stop serving their psychological defense system. Most people with these traits build a hollow, grandiose facade to hide a real self that feels unworthy and small. When they encounter someone who will no longer play along, someone who does not fawn or chase, they feel destabilized. You reflect a wholeness they cannot imitate. This is where your independence becomes a psychological revelation they never wanted to face. To acknowledge your balance and clarity is to admit their control was an illusion. While you might hope this leads them to grow, it usually leads to further escalation or total collapse because they cannot easily dismantle the only identity that protects them from their own void. But that is no longer your burden. You have moved into a different orbit where you no longer seek their validation. You have found meaning in your own purpose and truth. Your identity has moved beyond their reach, and that is when the structure finally falls apart. Not because of an attack, but because you stopped feeding the lie. That silence and peace is what forces them to reckon with the truth. They were never the source of your power. You were. That realization is liberating for you. It is the moment you stop measuring your life by their reactions and begin building something intentional and resilient. The day you no longer need them to see your value is the day they are forced to see the emptiness in themselves. And that is the most powerful revelation of all, because it finally sets you free. The period following the collapse of the narcissist's narrative is often characterized by a strange and heavy stillness. For a long time, your life was defined by noise, if not literal shouting, then the constant mental chatter of anticipating their moods, decoding their hidden meanings, and managing their fragile ego. When you finally detach and the illusion shatters, the silence that follows can feel unsettling at first because you have been conditioned to equate peace with the calm before a storm. But this silence is different. It is the quiet of a vacant room where a ghost no longer dwells. You begin to realize that the energy you once spent maintaining their facade is now returning to you. It is a slow reclamation of the self. You start to notice your own preferences again, your own rhythms, and the subtle nuances of your own personality that were flattened or suppressed to make room for their grandiosity. This is the stage of reintegration. It is where the focus shifts entirely away from the narcissist's void and toward your own substance. You are no longer looking back to see if they are watching or if they are suffering, because their state of being has become irrelevant to your own. This irrelevance is the final stage of healing. It is not born out of a desire to hurt them, but out of a profound realization that you are no longer stakeholders in each other's internal lives. While the narcissist may continue to cycle through stages of resentment, searching for a new audience to validate their fiction, you are occupied with the labor of living authentically. You begin to understand that the strength you used to survive the relationship was always yours. The narcissist was merely a parasite living off the interest of your emotional wealth. Now that the connection is severed, that wealth belongs solely to you. You find that you no longer need to explain the truth to anyone, least of all to them, because truth does not require a witness to be valid. It simply is. This newfound autonomy is not a shield you carry, but the ground you walk on. As you move forward, the tactics that once paralyzed you, the guilt tripping, the gaslighting, the cold shoulders, now appear almost transparent, like a child's magic trick once the secret has been revealed. You realize that you didn't just survive a difficult person, you survived a systemic assault on your perception of reality. And in the wake of that survival, you possess a rare kind of clarity. You have seen the bottom of the narrative and found it empty, and in that emptiness, you found the courage to build something real. Your life is no longer a performance or a reaction, it is a creation. And as the narcissist remains trapped in the loop of their own making, forever seeking a mirror that will lie to them, you walk away into the sunlight of a life that is entirely, undeniably, and beautifully your own. As the dust settles from the collapse of the constructed narrative, a new and perhaps unexpected challenge arises: the management of the void. For months or even years, your psychological landscape was dominated by the narcissist's chaotic weather patterns. When you finally achieve total emotional distance, the absence of that conflict can feel like a vacuum. It is essential to recognize that this emptiness is not a sign of loss, but the clearing of space. In the initial phases of this independence, you may find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop, or habitually checking your internal compass against their perceived judgment. This is the lingering echo of a hijacked nervous system. However, as you remain anchored in your own reality, these echoes grow faint. You are entering a period of profound self-reclamation where the objective is no longer to understand the narcissist, but to remember yourself. This involves a meticulous process of deprogramming. You must begin to identify which of your beliefs were actually yours and which were implanted by a person who needed you to feel small so they could feel significant. This is the stage where you stop being a character in a tragedy and start becoming the author of a new story. You begin to realize that the empathy you so freely gave away was a finite and precious resource, and you start redirected it inward. This self-directed compassion is the ultimate antidote to the narcissist's influence. While they remain stuck in a perpetual loop of seeking external validation to fill an unfillable hole, you are learning to cultivate a sense of worth that is entirely internal and non-negotiable. You find that you no longer have the desire to win an argument or prove your point to them, because you recognize that their inability to see the truth is a functional limitation of their own psyche, not a reflection of your clarity. This shift represents the final transition from a victim of a narrative to an observer of a pathology. Your independence becomes a quiet, immovable fortress. The narcissist may attempt occasional hoovers or small provocations to see if the old triggers still work, but they find only a smooth, reflective surface where there used to be a jagged, emotional hook. You have reached a state of functional indifference, where their presence or absence no longer dictates your emotional temperature. This is the true meaning of winning. It isn't found in a grand confrontation or a public exposure of their flaws. It is found in the moment you realize you haven't thought about them at all for days. You are busy building a life based on authentic connection, personal integrity, and the simple, radical joy of being known for who you truly are. The narcissist is left behind in the theater of their own mind, performing for an audience that has long since left the building, while you step out into a world that is vast, honest, and finally yours to command. The final stage of this psychological journey is the transition from mere survival to the establishment of a permanent, unshakable sanctuary within the self. Once the narcissist realizes that their theater has been permanently closed, they may retreat into a state of cold resentment or move on to a new target, but your focus must remain on the architecture of your own future. This period is defined by the cultivation of high-level discernment. You begin to see the world through a lens that is no longer clouded by the need to please or the fear of conflict. This isn't about becoming hyper-vigilant or cynical. Rather, it is about developing an internal filtration system that quickly identifies manipulative dynamics before they can take root. You have learned the high cost of ignoring your intuition, and as a result, that intuition has sharpened into a formidable tool for self-protection. You find that your relationships with others begin to change as well. You are no longer drawn to people who require fixing or who demand that you shrink yourself to accommodate their ego. Instead, you gravitate toward mutual transparency and genuine reciprocity. This is the ultimate byproduct of the narcissist's failure. They intended to break your spirit, but they accidentally forced you to forge a spirit that is unbreakable. As you settle into this new baseline of peace, you may find that the memories of the gaslighting and the emotional turbulence lose their visceral sting. They become historical data rather than active wounds. This is the essence of post-traumatic growth. You aren't just returning to the person you were before the narcissist entered your life. You are becoming someone far more integrated and capable. You have walked through the fire of a simulated reality and emerged with a profound grasp of what is actually true. The narcissist's greatest fear was that you would realize you could survive without them, but the reality is even more devastating for them. You aren't just surviving, you are thriving in a way they never can. While they remain tethered to the superficial world of image and status, you are anchored in the deep world of meaning and purpose. Your life becomes a testament to the fact that light is more powerful than the shadows of manipulation. You carry yourself with a quiet authority that needs no defense. The silence that once felt like a weapon of the narcissist has now been reclaimed as your own private garden of reflection. In this space, the story of the narcissist finally ends, and the story of your own unlimited potential begins. You have moved beyond the stage, beyond the play, and beyond the reach of anyone who seeks to define you by their own limitations. You are, at last, the sole architect of your own soul. The final evolution of this process is the movement into a state of profound psychological immunity. It is one thing to detach from a single individual, but it is a much deeper achievement to dismantle the internal structures that allowed the narcissistic narrative to take root in the first place. This stage is about the total reclamation of your mental real estate. For years, a portion of your brain was dedicated to a simulated version of the narcissist, a mental program that constantly ran in the background. guessing their reactions, softening your words, and editing your behavior to avoid their wrath. Recovery is the process of deleting that program. As you do this, you experience a surge of cognitive energy that was previously drained by the sheer effort of existing alongside a disordered personality. You begin to experience life with a vividness and a presence that felt impossible when you were in survival mode. You are no longer looking at the world through the foggy lens of someone else's insecurity. Instead, you are seeing life for exactly what it is, a wide-open field of possibilities that are no longer contingent on anyone else's permission. This stage is also marked by a radical shift in how you view the past. You no longer see the time spent with the narcissist as wasted years, but as a period of intense, albeit painful, refinement. You have gained a PhD in human nature that most people will never have to acquire. This knowledge makes you dangerous to predators, but a sanctuary for the authentic. You find that your presence alone now acts as a natural repellent for those who seek to dominate others. Because you no longer project a need for external validation, those who hunt for supply find nothing to latch onto. You have become a closed circuit, emotionally and spiritually self-sufficient, while the narcissist continues their frantic search for someone to prop up their collapsing ego. You are standing on solid ground, watching the horizon for what you want to create next. You have realized that the most powerful thing you can ever be is unmanipulatable. This doesn't mean you are closed off to love. It means you are only open to love that is rooted in truth. You have learned that your peace is not a luxury, but a non-negotiable requirement for your existence. The narcissist remains a relic of a previous life, a ghost in a play that has long since finished its run. You are now the protagonist of a journey that is defined by freedom, guided by wisdom, and fueled by a heart that is finally, irrevocably your own. The ultimate destination of this transformation is the transition from recovery into a state of total existential sovereignty. In this final phase, you realize that the narcissist was never truly your shadow. They were merely a catalyst that forced you to discover your own light. The deep work of healing eventually moves past the trauma itself and into the realm of radical self-authorship. You are no longer defined by what was done to you, nor are you defined by the resistance you put up against their control. Instead, you are defined by the values you choose to uphold and the future you choose to build. This is the moment when the narcissist becomes a distant footnote in a much larger and more significant volume. You no longer carry the weight of their projections, and the heavy armor you once wore for protection begins to fall away, revealing a version of yourself that is both softer and stronger than the one that entered the relationship. You have learned that true power does not come from the ability to dominate others, but from the ability to remain centered in your own truth, regardless of the chaos surrounding you. As you move through the world now, you carry an invisible but palpable aura of self-possession. This is the result of having survived the psychological equivalent of a total eclipse. You have seen the darkness of a false reality, and as a result, you have developed a profound appreciation for what is genuine. You find that you are no longer easily impressed by the grand gestures or the superficial charm that once lured you in. Instead, you are moved by consistency, by quiet integrity, and by the courage of those who live without masks. Your life becomes a series of intentional choices rather than a series of reactions to external pressure. You have reclaimed your time, your emotional labor, and your creative potential. The narcissist, meanwhile, remains trapped in the amber of their own dysfunction. forever reliving the same patterns with different people, never able to achieve the depth or the peace that you now inhabit. Their narrative has collapsed because it was a house of cards, while your life is being built on the bedrock of reality. You have transcrossed the boundary from being a victim of their story to being the sole creator of your own. The silence is no longer an absence of sound, it is the presence of freedom. You are finally at home in yourself, and in that home, there is no room for anything that is not built on a foundation of absolute truth.